Hey, Lane here. I wanted to talk about expectations. It's one thing that solves so many issues. And I think the biggest problem is that people feel like they're being clear with their expectations when they're really not. This can apply to so many things. And honestly, in my personal opinion, there's almost like no such thing as too much clarity on something. I don't know if it's even achievable. And even if it was, I don't think it's a bad thing. Um, and the reason I bring this up is because, I've spoken to quite a few business people and entrepreneurs lately about hiring. And a lot of people have questions because they have issues with employees. And a lot of what I find in our discussions is that the expectations are not clearly outlined up front. So a lot of people think they're being clear when they say, like, hey, I need this done by this time or whatever. And a lot of people don't even give deadlines, which is a huge, like, you have to learn to give deadlines. And that's hard. Sometimes, something falls short and it's like, well, did you give them a deadline? You're like, no. But so deadlines are a big part, but expectation is absolutely huge. So deadlines are part of expectation. Deadline is the when. There's all the other questions: the who, what, why, where, how, and honestly, like, if you can answer all of those questions when you're explaining something in terms of your expectation of the result that you want, you're going to be better off than if you only give, one or two, the what and the where. You're limiting the result by not being more clear. And like I said, this applies all over the gambit. You see it in hiring. I had a friend I spoke to not that long ago who was having a problem filling a particular position, and of course it's she's starting to think, like, is it me? Are my expectations out of control? And I don't think that anything that she wanted was unrealistic. You can learn to work with anybody. I mean, if like the meanest guy on the block can have an assistant who puts up with him day in and day out, people can deal with each other in terms of personalities and stuff. But when people go into a situation not really knowing what to expect, and then it's tremendously different from what they expected, that is where you will go wrong. In fact, I remember a story where there was that guy, that really grumpy, mean guy, not a bad person, but just grumpy. And they were having the hardest time filling a position, like working opposite him. And finally, they asked somebody's opinion. This is the person that was telling me the story. They had called him in to help find somebody. And so he was like, well, what are you telling these people? And he sat through an interview. And he was like, you have to be upfront about who they're working for. It's not that nobody will work for him, but you got to find the right person. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting tons of time hiring, training, losing people, hiring, training, losing people. It's a lot of time and money and energy spent. So they changed their tactic in terms of the hiring and the interviewing, and said right out front, that this is what it's like, this is what you're dealing with, and found somebody who just said, you know what, I can take it, and worked out perfectly. I personally used to speak to, well, first of all, I would run potential candidates through a gambit before they ever got to meet with me face to face. They had to be able to at least follow directions to even be able to get an interview. And that first interview was usually about 5 minutes, and they had to sit there and listen to me talk for about anywhere from like 20 to 25 minutes about the company and about the expectations. And I even turned that up by giving them a paper that outlined kind of even the ugly parts. Specifically focused, like basically my goal in hiring is to scare away everyone who will be scared away by the gory details. Because positions, especially, in the companies that I've worked with, they're demanding. And you have to be able to hack it. And I don't want to waste my time with you if you can't. So there would still, every now and then, there would still be somebody who would get all the way through and then pretend like they didn't know. But once I put that whole system together and really got detailed and got very serious with these candidates right up front about all the reasons they don't want to work for us, it really reduced the number of the amount of turnover tremendously. It literally went from I used to fire on the regular to I was suddenly like, God, I have not fired somebody in so long. Like, this is awesome. But it really just is poignant to the fact that it's very important to clearly outline your expectations right up front. And the more detailed you can get, the better. In fact, most of the time, if you're getting a result that you're not happy with, chances are you're not clear enough up front. And that can mean training, or that can mean your instructions when you assign the test. So training would be obviously if it's something they do on the regular, but then you get it and you're like, what is this, Maybe they weren't properly trained up front. That happens all the time. People don't have great training processes. Training is one of the great ways to set tremendous expectations. But it can also be your communication when you ask for something. I have to be conscious of what I'm asking for because I tend to go right to the bottom line. Like, this is what I need. And the details don't even generally bother me, but sometimes when I get the finished product, I'm like, probably should have been more detailed than that. But just as like a general rule, if you're having an issue with that, like let's say it's on the regular and it's with a lot of people, you probably should look at your own communication style and consider where you can give more information so that you might get out a better product, a better end result for yourself. All right. So just keep that in mind with your employees, or anybody you're working with. It doesn't even have to be an employee, or it could be a friend. But if you need something done, the more detail you can give, the better. All right. Save yourself the headache.